kicked off a platform is kind of censored.
Yeah, come on.
No, it's not kind of. It's not censored. There's no.
Well, it is just specific to that platform. You know, y'all are both right. Y'all are both right, right?
Not censored.
The form of censoring.
Okay.
Twitter took
It's
it down.
not a form.
We'll call it a light censor then for you.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, we all are both right. Y'all are talking past each other, kind of, right?
You still get kicked out of your
accounts. Hello. Twitter restored those.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Oh,
Well, we all know
God.
that Twitter does it's the same. I mean, it's the argument that they're private, and we get it, but they do just take all the social medias do that. They choose what they want up there. But if the article is published, you know, I mean, then no, technically it's not like entirely censored, you know, like not allowed to come out and no one could see it. And I think that this whole y'all probably think I'm crazy or disagree, but I don't really believe in politics, so I think that this is all kind of planned or whatever. So like I think that they're making it look like they're trying to censor Trump, but they're actually just making it look like that. So once you don't trust the news, then you trust Trump.
One of the interesting thing is neither Hunter nor Joe have denied any of this stuff. They never said this is nonsense. I never dropped off a laptop. Any emails you see are complete fabrications. None of them have said anything. At this critical time in his campaign, you would think if this is all made up, the first thing they would be saying is this is all fake. This is a complete propaganda to try and throw off the election. There is nothing valid about any of this stuff.
Yeah, it's just the media saying it's fake, and then Adam Schiff saying it's a Russian.
That's a great point. You would at least come out if you didn't do anything. You would definitely come out and say something.
Especially we're what 2 weeks away. 2 weeks away from the election, you would think that they would be all over it, right? Like this. Well, it would be different if the story. Don't anybody believe this for a second? This is absolute falsehood. There is no evidence whatsoever that any of this is credible. That's what
and it'd be different if this story had never been heard of, right? But like Joe Biden is on camera on an interview, vaguely addressing the idea, right? And Trump's even said something to him in the debate, right? So that way, it's not like don't give it false credibility by acknowledging it. Like it's already been discussed and acknowledged. Like the whole narrative, right, of Hunter Biden not having any prior experience, getting paid an insane amount of money to sit on the board, and then the communications aspect has now entered the window.
The Russians put him on the board.
Can I bring up something else with WITSIT?
What's up, man?
It was the same question I asked Jeremy earlier. But, you're aware of the satellites, Epic aboard Discover, Electro which is a Russian satellite, and Himawari 8, right?
Yes.
Do you think the images that they produce are fake?
Yeah. As in fake, as in like, yeah, they composite images, yeah.
Composite. Right, well, okay, I mean, that's not true, but we'll move on from that. So why is it that you think that Himawari, just for example, takes a picture every 10 minutes of the entire Earth when they're not obligated to do so? They could, take one, once a week, and by taking one every 10 minutes, not only do they have to give themselves work that they didn't have to, but they're also opening themselves to being, fucking caught, right? They're giving people like Black Earthers more opportunity. So why do you think it is that they do that? Why give
for that very reason, right? To give the illusion of credibility. But how high is? Can you name one specific one? How high is it?
I believe it's in geosynchronous orbit, about 30,000 kilometers.
Is it like the thermosphere?
Sorry?
It's in the thermosphere.
No.
It's beyond that.
Well beyond it.
Right, so it's beyond like the ISS and stuff.
Right, but
it's like 30,000 kilometers, maybe.
If memory serves, yes. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that they do not have to produce. Electro, I believe, takes one every 10 minutes too. Himawari, I believe, takes one every 30 minutes. Right?
Yeah, my friend.
Epic. Right,
my friend, I don't believe in like space agencies and governments,
that's
man.
Fine. but it's
You
not
believe in
space
space agencies?
Actually,
Have got. What if I came in here and I was
fucking
like,
hell,
"This is this, bro. I'm gonna let you talk. I promise. I'm saying, just imagine. This is how it looks to me. This is me on. This is how it is to me. It's like if I came in here and I started arguing like the 1980 Soviet Union propaganda they said to the population, even though we know it's not true, or like it's questionable, right? Because we know they lied. Like if I came in here and started telling every story they said and I was arguing it, that's how it sounds to me. I'm telling you, like my honest position is I don't trust a handful of like governmental space agencies, man.
Okay, first of all, Himawari is not a
Good reason.
space agency. It's a meteorological fucking agency.
It's private, is what you're saying?
No, it's Japanese meteorological.
Okay, so it's not private.
Not private, no. But,
Right, I don't trust governments, dude. Japan went along with the story of nuclear bombs.
You're getting off my fucking point. I'm asking you why these space agencies and meteorological.
I answered it. Why do they put out pictures so often when it could increase the chance of them getting caught? That's your question, right?
And under no obligation to do so, and it costs more money to do so.
Well, it's not about obligation, man. I mean, if the Earth's a ball, you'd want to get the high definition pictures as often as possible. If it were possible, you'd want 4K ultra live stream of it. It's nothing about obligation. Just because if the Earth's a ball and we can go to space, it's beautiful, and you'd want to see that, and you'd want to do it the most efficiently you could as technology progressed, right? There's no obligation. They're supposed to not be hiding anything.
Right, but what I'm saying is, right, so, and the ISS also comes into this, they didn't have to fucking create an international space station. They didn't have to do the high definition Earth viewing experiment.
Bro, why are you scattergunning? If you want to talk about the ISS, we can talk about that. If you want to talk about another one, we can talk about that.
Because it's still on the same point.
But they make different claims, right? Like one's 30,000 kilometers away and one's only 252 miles away.
Right, but
nobody has to do anything, man.
It's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you're aware of the high definition Earth viewing experiment that the ISS conducted, right?
Yeah, they're in the thermosphere, right? 252 miles.
They're under no obligation to do that. They did it. Gives them more opportunity to be caught. Again, I ask, why would they do it?
I've answered it 3 times, dude.
You haven't. How can you?
Yes, to give the illusion of credibility, so you can ask me the question.
To whom?
So you can to the people. So you can ask me the question that's skeptical of them. But if they're lying, why would they do it so often? That's why.
How many people do you think look at the ISS? How many people do you think?
So now we're talking about the ISS. They don't take a picture of the Earth every 10 minutes in entirety. So you're changing your claim.
Let me finish, dude. I'm asking.
You're scattergunning, dude.
No, I'm not. I'm asking you, how many people do you think are interested in ISS Earth viewing experiment? How many people do you think are interested in Himawari images? Only people that like meteorologists, right? Only people that need the data, right? The fucking general public don't know anything about these things, right? So your answer makes no sense whatsoever.
Yes, it does, man.
I mean, it's an answer. It makes sense. It's just it isn't a particularly strong answer. Like it seems a little bit like a weird thing for this.
It's not a great
Well, that's
question.
your opinion, man.
No, that's my opinion. That's fine.
So if we're talking about the
Why?
ISS, we can move to that
Why?
because they don't take full pictures of the Earth, all right? But they're 252 miles. How hot is it in the area that the ISS is? Like 3,000 degrees or something?
I'm going to say
So if it's that hot in there, then how's the ISS up
Hold
there?
on, WITSIT, you understand that when you're trying to calculate the thermal load on something, you also need to know the mass of that thermal load, right?
Okay.
Like for example, like when I take cookies out of my oven at 600 degrees, I can stick my hand in the oven. It's not going to burn me. But if I stick my hand in 600-degree water, I'll be scalded badly,
Yeah, so you're
right?
talking about the density of the atmosphere. Right?
Yes,
You think I don't know
exactly.
the official explanation? Come on, dude.
So there's only a tiny amount of molecules bouncing around at high speed at the elevation
So
of the
since
ISS.
there's not very many particles, then it doesn't transfer the heat. But what's the ISS made of?
The ISS would be losing heat faster
Particles.
than it's gaining it. Yeah, but
What
it's
is
what are you talking about?
Is the ISS made of particles?
It's made of a solid substance, yes.
Okay, so then it's a compilation of particles within there, so it would transfer the heat.
Yeah, but the ISS is radiating the heat faster than the particles that are interacting with the ISS are transferring their heat to the ISS.
If it's 3,000 degrees and the only reason it isn't feeling hot is because it's a
You
lack
understand?
of particles.
Temperature is just the average velocity of the particles.
Yes, but once you
But if there's hardly any particles, if there's hardly any particles at all, that the heat that's actually being put into the object is negligible. It's nothing, literally nothing. You understand that, right?
Okay,
While at the same time, the ISS is radiating its own heat at a far greater rate than whatever amount of energy that's being put into it is.
Okay, it's radiating heat at what temperature?
Whatever the surface of the temperature of the ISS is.
So you just
which would depend on where, which would depend. What do you mean? That would depend on a whole bunch of things, right? How long is the ISS in the sun? How long has it been in the sun? Right, the angle that the sun is hitting it. It's going to vary greatly.
Okay, man, but what I'm saying is the official explanation that you act like I didn't know, but we all know is that.
So why did you bring it up then? Because it's stupid.
Oh my, because of the gradient, there's less particles at the top.
Fewer.
But ironically, the ISS is a compilation of matter. It would transfer heat because the particles that do collide with it are still at a very extremely high velocity. Now, what is
but
the
how much
ISS
heat? The
made
question
of?
is, okay, the measurement in energy being transferred would be measured in joules. So how many joules of energy are being transferred to the ISS at that density of particles and the energy of those particles? How many joules of energy are being transferred at any given moment, right?
You tell me.
And then at the same time, how many joules of energy are being radiated by the ISS?
Okay, do you know the answer to that question?
That would determine whether the material is being heated or not. It'd take a simple calculation to do it, but it would be almost nothing because there's so few particles at the altitude of the ISS.
Dude, I would be interested.
I can do the math for you on it, but I can guarantee you it's gonna be nothing. It's gonna be less than me holding a lighter up to the ISS.
Okay, so if you would like to cite it, I don't want to see where you did it, but obviously the people that put that shit up there, they would have to know that. If you would like to cite it and exactly what the differential is, I would be more than happy to look at it.
They do a couple of things. But it also comes into Mylar so that the radiative heat has trouble getting in.
Okay. That's a cool story.
Oh, wow.
It's true.
Yeah, so I'll just come up with just hypothetical stories. So
how is it?
Well, why do you say that?
That's what y'all have done.
If you
I doubt the very base premise.
Story. I mean, do you not know what Mylar is? It's a pretty easy to understand a characteristic of the substance.
Why do you always act like that's because I'm somehow lacking comprehension?
Well, I don't understand why you laughed at it without giving an explanation.
Because it's insufficient.
It's so obvious. But why? If you know what Mylar is, it wouldn't be insufficient.
Then cite the differential, please.
Well, I know. I made a statement that you laughed at. That's what we were at.
Because you're just making up a story you can't even cite. NASA hasn't even done this.
I'm making a story. I'm telling you a fact about the ISS. It's covered in Mylar, and that reflects stuff.
I didn't even laugh.
You guys both did.
You did not laugh.
You both did. Jim.
No, I didn't.
Let Jim speak, and then you can say what you're saying. Remember, Jim, what are you trying to say?
I was going to say this idea isn't alien to us. If we want to keep a car cool on a summer's day, we put a reflective thing in the windscreen, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand the concept, my friend.
Right, but it's so why is it?
So why did you laugh?
No, all I'm pointing out is that this is the thing. When flat earthers say there's only 7 elements or so that could withstand that heat, none of them are used in the ISS. And look, it's so hot up there. And the way that the Globers respond is that all the flat earthers are stupid for saying that because they don't understand what that. Why do you have to interrupt me, dude?
Because I was saying we don't respond that way.
Okay, calm down, man. They act like all the flat earthers are stupid because they just assume they don't know the official explanation. But we do know the official explanation. But the question is, we don't just blindly accept anything that they can come up with because the compilation of matter and particles at the ISS would still transfer heat. And it's made of plastic on parts of it.
So, Weimer, why did you laugh at the idea that Mylar is put on there?
Anyway, man, can we just move on, man?
Well,
Sure.
yeah,
Instead
but
of
what's
like
it?
telling me I have to believe NASA put
What's
something
it?
252
How-
miles
how-
up.
Why would you not
what's it?
believe that? Why was that hard to believe?
I don't believe NASA.
Okay, what's it?
man.
If I took a what's it? If I took a piece of if I took a bar of aluminum, right? I took a bar of aluminum and I opened up the oven and I stuck a bar of aluminum in the oven. How long would it take for that bar of aluminum to get hot to the touch?
Less time or more time than if you closed it.
Let's say that oven is 800 degrees. I'm
More
gonna close
time
it.
than
Let's
if
say
you
it's
closed
800
it.
degrees, right? We could calculate how long that would take, but you know, it would take some time, right? It would take tens of seconds before that aluminum became hot to the
Right.
touch, right? And you're talking about there's literally trillions of times more interactions with the tiny surface area of that bar of aluminum in that oven than there would be over the entire ISS flying through space.
Okay, now listen to this. Now extend
can I
that
just-
oven to the size of a football field and make that aluminum ball shoot all the way through
I'd just like to say
the
something real
entire
quick.
football field.
That block of aluminum isn't covered in reflective material, right? But the ISS is.
Well, the reflective material would only be towards radiative.
That's right.
Yeah, and are you going to say the reflective would keep it from getting
whereas
hot?
flying through the medium of the very thin atmosphere that's high temperature would be conductive.
Would you agree that the
You're right.
velocity would also play into the scenario that we're
The velocity of the ISS would just increase the number of interactions, right?
Whoa, right. It would increase the number of collisions.
But there are so few. It's still many orders of magnitude.
But it
less
would
than
increase
the
it by many
interactions.
orders of magnitude of collisions, right?
Not by
Sure.
orders of magnitude, not by orders of magnitude.
at least he admitted it.
Nil against nil
that's
is
true. You
still
don't know
nil.
that's true. This
It
a
is.
false
It's
statement.
inevitably true, my friend.
That's not true. If you think it's inevitably true, then you're not using.
Well,
the term
if
orders of
they're
magnitude
very
correctly.
sparse in the top of the atmosphere and it's just still, then it's barely ever going to hit them. But then if you start flying through it, even though it's sparse, it's going to increase significantly. We'll just say that word. No reason for semantics, man.
Yeah, fair enough.
Okay, so you agree that it's at least logically founded for me to question that claim, right?
Question which
But it's
claim?
relying to-
That if it's up there where it's 3,000 degrees, but the only reason that it doesn't heat up is because of lack of particles, but it's a compilation of particles and matter, and it's shooting through that medium, then I have a
Right.
logical foundation.
But
to
there's
question
so
that
few
story.
that it's hardly
It's pretty
anything.
much empty space.
That's
because-
just what,
Pretty much empty space there should do.
it's super
because
hot up there, right?
When the astronauts,
Incredibly low.
when the astronauts are in the space on the spacewalk. Hold on a second. When the astronauts are on a spacewalk and they're flying 17,000 miles per hour through space, they don't experience any wind at all in their spacesuit. None, right? Like not even what you would experience in a 2-mile-per-hour wind on Earth.
Yeah, that's a pretty
in the
cool
spacesuit.
story. They're going 5 miles a second with no wind. They just go outside.
Yes,
They
that's
just go outside and
just to
walk
give you an
around. They just
idea
go
of
outside.
how.
Bro, chill. They have the videos where they do the spacewalks or whatever, right? They just go outside the ISS that's going 17,500 miles per hour and just chill. Like they just go left and right and just move around like completely effortlessly. Y'all just blindly believe that? Y'all don't even have the slight inclination to question that?
Well, why would you question it? What do you think is wrong
Because it
about
just
that?
isn't logically follow. At least you could do is like
Yes,
admit that it's logically questionable.
It does logically follow, though.
There's a logical
The only reason it wouldn't
explanation,
logically
right?
follow if you had
What's
a, if you
illogical
had,
about
if you
There's
had
a
very
logical
different idea of what the
explanation, bro.
situation was.
I understand there's
mean-
there's a logical explanation, right? Like you can lay a logical foundation that what you're saying could be true because of
But
the
what-
relative
it was
relationship
more
of the
than that.
ISS once it obtains orbit. Right?
So-
More than that, it's all the
illogical
things that we
about
think we know about the space and the area. All those things we already have knowledge of comport with that particular explanation. It doesn't contradict our a priori knowledge.
Of course it does, Scott.
What does it contradict?
I said no, of course it doesn't contradict it.
Oh, of course it doesn't.
Why would it? If they were lying, would it? Of course
Well,
not.
you said-
That
you
would
said
show
something
major
illogical.
incompetence, right, Scott? Is the U.S. military incompetent?
Sometimes. You said
Yeah,
that
you're
it-
right.
it-
Touche,
it-
touche.
You said that it was a logical story, but I guess the implication of that would be like, well, it's just, yeah, sure, they can make up a story about it, but it's not just a logical story. It's this logical story that comports with what we know. So that makes
What do we
it
know?
not feel
Important
arbitrary.
is what we know, like
things
what?
things like that. There's things like they're in a vacuum of space there. That there's not an atmosphere.
How do we know that?
Well, I'm saying a priori knowledge. I'm not saying that it's a fact knowledge. I'm
Well,
just
we
saying that's the
don't
kind of
know
thing
that,
we have
right? they claim to know it, and then they told us that, right?
It's just that it's something that we already believe, you know.
But but we don't know, right? You do at least agree. We don't actually
say no like that. I'm not trying to say no like that. I'm just saying it matches with what we've already been told.
Right. Okay. Okay. Of course it does, because if it didn't, then that would show major incompetence on their part.
Well, again, you make it sound as if before, though, that it was just an arbitrary story. It's not.
It's a story within the framework of the prior story.
Okay. Well.
Okay.
Whatever that makes sense.
All right.
So I have one other question. Then I'll back off for a while for other people. But my understanding is the ISS is incredibly well insulated, which means that it keeps the radiative heat out pretty darn well. Most of the problem with heat and temperature on the ISS, I think, comes from the fact that everything they're doing inside there is generating heat. So their issue is less about dealing with the solar heat and more about dealing with how do we get rid of how do we not cook ourselves inside with all the things we're doing, all the electricity and all the moving around and all that kind of stuff. And my understanding is that they have a bunch of radiators. I mean, you literally use radiative technology. They have radiators built into the ISS that.
Well, they'd have to, right?
Basically.
Nobody's up there.
But they would have to do that. Yeah, of course. Scott, you do understand, right? Like, no logical human that's like actually a flat earther questions that there's some logic in some of the explanations they've given us, or they wouldn't even been accepted as the potential explanations, dude. Like, we're challenging the base assumptions that they tell us that we have to rely on them to believe.
Is a flat earther. So
that's a cool story.
Why isn't it melting? And then when we say the reasons, and you say, well, obviously.
The simplest explanation.
No. What you're saying is there's a logical explanation, so that's not in any way evidence of what's in contention, which is their story true?
Well, why do you not believe the story?
Because it just doesn't make sense to me. Because if you are saying that you're shooting, there's logic. But when I say it doesn't make sense, it isn't hyper logical. Okay. So if the ISS is shooting through there, bro, like, it's going to hit a lot more particles. And every single one every single particle that it hits is moving at a crazy velocity. So each particle collision and interaction is much more significant. And when you start shooting at that speed, you are increasing the collisions a lot.
But it all hinges on how many particles are they really colliding with, right? And that question, or the answer to that question, that really gives the difference between whether that's a believable thing or an unbelievable thing.
What's the answer?
And I don't know the answer, but my
why do you say things then, man?
They tell us. Because I'm telling you, because I'm giving my opinion just like you do. They tell us that it's almost none. I see no reason to disbelieve that. Do you see a reason to disbelieve that?
How fast is it going again?
This is what I'm saying. You're saying they tell us that. What they tell us is the nature or the characteristics of it. Now, I've never seen them come out and say the number of particles that hit the ISS. I know they haven't done that, which is why I said, why'd you say that?
You calculate it because...
No. But did NASA calculate it? Because wouldn't they have to efficiently go up there and ensure that the energy and heat transfer wouldn't fuck them up?
I'm sure they have a good...
Right, so that's what I'm asking, bro.
Well, they would also know that from prior missions too, right?
Well, you made the claim that they know the particle number. I'm saying if you want to cite it, I'll look at it. What is it?
When they tell us it's a vacuum with basically no particles, I've seen no reason why that's hard to believe.
Well, it would be an average inherently, right? It would be an average inherently.
Well,
let's put it this way, WITSIT. There's so few particles that they're not able to directly measure it. They have to calculate it based on the degree of orbital degradation over time.
Okay.
That's the way that they're able to infer. They're able to infer that by estimating the drag of the ISS. Look and then seeing how much the orbit decays over time, and by the way, that number varies, which is why there's a degree of unpredictability when it comes to how fast satellites decay in low Earth orbit, because the drag varies greatly from day to day.
Okay, yeah, that would be the official explanation, right? The drag, that you could approximate it. Because you could never actually measure it, which is why I contended it, because we know that it would vary inherently just based on solely like the collisions themselves, like the gas particles themselves. They're randomly, chaotically dispersing omnidirectional and at high velocities, and so you would never have a consistent value. You could approximate based on what you're saying, right? And I'm sure they have done that. So if I would be interested into seeing that actually. personally. Like the number, like the approximation.
I'll tell you the decay rate of every satellite.
But what about the approximation of collisions? Does that even exist? Did they not do that part? Because they would have to do that part to even try to go up there. They just didn't tell us about it. That part's just classified or something. I mean,
They threw caution to the wind.
Would you like a chapter out of a textbook WITSIT that describes it?
I would like them to tell me what the approximation of particle collision is.
I just said, would you like a chapter out of a textbook that describes it?
If it does give the figure of approximation of particle collision, then sure.
So you just want the number, but you don't want to do the homework and actually read what's actually done to calculate the drag on an aircraft.
You don't. No, you just don't. You just don't want me to hold your feet to the fire and want exactly what we need right now, which is the approximation of the particle collision. Because you would have to know that figure to factor in everything, including the engineering of the ISS itself. Well, I'm saying NASA knows it. So are you saying NASA just did it? It's just classified that?
I don't know. We are not walking encyclopedias of everything NASA's ever done.
Of course not. But you brought this up, bro. Like I didn't ask randomly bring it up.
You're asking for the particles.
But
no one
Scott, you brought it up. No, Scott, you brought it up.
You brought it up. I didn't bring up.
Did everybody hear Scott say they know the number?
You brought it up, and I said they tell us that it's a vacuum, and I believe it.
You said they know the number.
I said they tell us there's almost no atmosphere there, and I believe it. That's what I said.
Yeah, you did finish it with that. Yeah, after you said that they can figure out the number.
Say they know the number.
Either way, man, don't say that I just made it up. I didn't.
I don't know if they did. But the point is that why would we know where they've published it, if they've published it? Like, why do you think that that's something that we're going to have knowledge of?
Well, okay. But I know that typically y'all don't have knowledge of it because you blindly believe them. I'm trying to test the veracity of their claims. That's the difference in you and I.
No, that's not really the difference.
You just blindly believe an explanation with a vague, ambiguous nature and didn't research it, but invokes the idea of it. I want to research it diligently and test the efficacy of the claim so I can actually make sense of it. You haven't done that, but you know I'm like crazy for not believing it.
And show us what the answer is.
Oh, dude, I only was talking for 20 seconds or so. I mean, that's kind of long, but could you let me finish? You complain about it.
You've been talking for a half hour already.
But I've been like very calm and let everyone ask me questions, man.
Yeah, of course. WITSIT, if you're interested in actually reading, I suspect you're not, but if you're interested in actually reading some of the literature there, I just gave you 2 links. So two papers, Christensen 1995A, 1995B, on enhanced meteoroid and orbital debris shielding in the Journal of Impact Engineering. And the second paper is Hypervelocity Impact Damage into Space Shuttle Surfaces.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, dude. Again. Thank you, man. Real shit.
It's exactly what you're asking, right?
Well, yeah, actually, ultimately, right? This will be the
there you go, yeah.
Yes, so this is what you're asking for because this will be the
reading homework to do. All right, I'm gonna go
this
get
will be this will be the foundation of what NASA has to do. I mean, this isn't about the ISS, though. So, but I will read it, and I'll just go research because I know that y'all aren't going to research it because you know they don't have the number. You're afraid of the fact they may not have had the number put out yet, and you might question yourself like, well, how did they do it then, right?
That's so far from any kind of truth.
Then go look it up. Then wouldn't you want to just test them yourself?
No, I don't care.
So you have to just blindly believe them then?
I do.
They told anybody the number. I bet it's an internal such calculation they did.
Scott, you agree that the other guy's wrong and you shouldn't just blindly believe him?
A critical assessment of satellite drag and atmospheric density model.
Why are y'all talking at the same time, man?
Because there's a lot of people and it's laggy, and so you don't.
Scott,
really know
do you disagree with the guy? Do you disagree with the guy that said that we should just blindly believe them?
I don't think you should blindly believe anyone or anything.
But that's what he said. I'm saying, do you disagree with that premise?
I don't know who he is, and I don't.
Forget the person. Forget the person. It doesn't matter. I'm talking about the premise.
I just say the answer. I don't think you should blindly believe anything. That's my answer.
Thank you. Right. Okay. Agreed. All right. So we can move on.
Can
I don't trust them. But we do know one thing.
ISS. When you got a minute, back in 2003, the space shuttle coming back in lost some tiles, which were heat transfer tiles. Didn't matter in orbit, but on re-entry, it actually burnt a lot of stuff. So if you want to have a look at that, around 2003, one of the space shuttles losing tiles, that'll give you a good story. And that's all about heat transfer. So get off your ass and don't let us research it. Do it yourself. That's a winner mentality when you do it yourself.
Okay, well, you know,
Well, you don't
up
think he
high
really
above,
cares, do
even
you?
if you can't go 252 miles, even if you were to go high, it'd be the same thing. We know there's a gradient, and we know that the velocity would increase proportionately with altitude. So if you were to have something up there, that would still be very relevant, right?
It's a good point, Boomer, but it's not the most exclusive point.
So, but would
heat
we all agree
transfer.
they'd have to have the right radius value to even go up there and maintain orbit?
Sure, I don't agree
Or even originally attain orbit?
Sure.
Okay, so that R value has to be correct, man.
Be close.
So we
What
should
R
talk about
value?
that, maybe. Are y'all afraid to talk about that? It's up to y'all. We don't have to.
You're
But they
just
do have to
boring.
have that
I think
value.
you already know why they never talked to you. You're beyond boring.
Oh,
Well,
bro,
okay,
the
well, the
R
R value is just
the
a
R
fairy
value
tale with
changes.
it. So.
They claim the R value varies, man.
Oh.
Does it? The Earth is like
varies.
it's like a lung. It's a giant lung that's breathing.
That's
Well,
what
I
it
think
varies
it's
depending
bigger.
on which
I think it's
direction you
expanding
measure
little
it.
by little.
So, but does it
Hey.
contract too?
Just make it up as we go.
Does it
I think it
contract
does.
and expand physically?
I think it does one or the other.
But
The
that's
universe
pretty
must.
wild. So you're saying the Earth physically contracts and expands like a lung?
No, I think it just expands. I think it very slowly, but I think it's. I read this somewhere. Like, don't quote me. Don't act like I'm saying I know.
Sure
This for a
you're
fact.
right.
I don't.
No, it's all good.
I did. Just let me finish what I'm saying, guys. You don't have to be so rude.
No,
I read somewhere that it's like
I'm
getting.
supporting
Hold on,
you,
just let me
Scott.
finish. That it's getting
go
wider
ahead,
and
man.
wider at a rate of. Hold on, dude. Why is your problem, man? Why is it you
No,
guys
it's
just
the
can't
leg.
let
It's just
people
the leg
talk?
fucking shit.
He's trying to help you, man.
Don't tell me about the lag. Just let me talk. That'd be fine.
He was agreeing with you. Go ahead.
Jesus Christ Almighty! It's really such a simple thing for me to say, guys. You guys really make this hard. I read somewhere that the Earth is getting bigger and bigger at a rate. I want to say it was something like 0.03 microns a year or something. I don't remember what the cause was. I can't remember what it was, but some reason why maybe we're expanding out at this incredibly infinitesimally small rate, and that we're just now getting measurement precise enough to measure it. And actually, it could be contracting, but it was one way or the other, and I don't know why.
Yeah, it was expanding because it was an alternate. It's like an alternate explanation for continental drift.
Right.
So Pangea,
okay.
they think
That's
that the
a
continents are just
different
drifting
idea.
on their own, and whereas with this explanation, it's that the Earth was actually smaller, and as it expanded, the continents got farther and farther away. Because if you actually shrink the Earth, the continents fit into each other like almost, perfectly.
Right. So, but we do agree, of course, with even with the theoretical postulation of that minute change, the radius value's got to be correct to attain orbit.
Approximately. Doesn't have to be.
But no. Very, very damn accurate. Like, it could be a little off, but not much at all.
If you're going to be hundreds of miles above the surface, how accurate do you need it to be?
Extremely accurate, because it's about your
Why
relative.
does it have to be so extreme?
I'm trying to explain it. It's because it's about your relationship of the mass of the ISS and the mass of the Earth.
The mass of the ISS is insignificant.
No, it's not to orbital trajectory.
Absolutely.
So you're saying the mass of the ISS relative to the mass of the Earth is irrelevant in gravitational orbit?
It's irrelevant in plotting its orbit around the Earth.
Can I ask you a question?
Can someone else please at least admit that guy is wrong?
Can
on
I ask
your
you a
own
question?
side?
Where the hell
No,
did you get the
of course
phrase
not.
gravitational
You have to change
orbit
the subject.
Where does
Okay,
that phrase
so-
come from?
Well, that's just what I call it.
Okay, that's what you got. Fine, thanks. Just want to
Yeah,
make
man.
sure.
I mean, is it not orbit due to gravity?
It's an orbit. It's not. I don't know where gravitational orbit. I don't know why.
So is
you're
gravity
adding
not
that
causing
prefix
the
to that.
orbit, man?
The satellite orbit.
Redundant.
Okay, it's gravitational orbit claim.
No, it's not.
Well, the reason I specify is because we
no
can
one
actually.
calls it that.
The reason I
No one in the industry calls it that. So
Okay,
where
it is
you're
not
getting
about.
this
You're playing
nonsense from,
semantics. Why you
at
try to
least
obfuscate?
if you want to actually sound intelligent, use the right term. Just
Says
call
the
it
guy
sat-
that's
say satellite
obfuscating
orbit.
in a semantical argument. Do you think that smart people think that sounds smart? Maybe you should keep my
I
intellectual
do.
competence
Yeah,
out
sure.
of your mouth.
No,
But
I
you're
do.
not smart.
I
You sound like actually you.
This is
sound
what
like
y'all
an
want. Y'all
idiot
trying
when
to make
you
it
say that.
devolve by
So I'm
calling
trying
me
to,
names.
I'm trying to help you by correcting your terminology so you sound like less of an idiot.
I'm gonna keep saying. I'm trying to explain why I
you
say it,
can't
but
call
you
them
didn't.
rocket.
I
He's gonna
say
sound like an idiot no
gravitational
matter what you
orbit
do.
to specify. I say gravitational orbits to specify because there is other types of orbit that's not gravitational, like quantum
Like
locking
what?
is technically an orbit, right?
Okay, then what other types of orbits are there?
Oh, wait. Did this dude just say quantum locking wasn't orbit? Y'all
I
just
didn't
disagree
say
with
that.
everything I say,
I
dude.
did.
But why?
Okay.
Just because you disagree with anything I say, that's why.
Well, when
It's
everything
not
you
like
say is
an
wrong,
orbit
it's
in
a
any
natural
way.
thing to do.
Well, everyone else in here on your side knows that wasn't wrong, and you're still just going down swinging? Being a contrarian? Chill, man. Please stop trying to provoke me into losing my cool. I'm trying to stay cool, man. Okay, so I
Really?
specify because there's
Cool.
quantum
No,
locking.
you still
There's
sound
also
like an idiot when
electro.
you say that.
There's
Just because
also
you know what you're
electro.
trying to say.
I just want to be clear. I don't think anybody else here agrees that quantum locking is an orbit.
It's not a
I
form
do.
of orbit.
You said everyone agrees. I don't
No,
think
it's
anybody
quantum
agrees.
locking.
Okay, who here doesn't agree?
Tidal locking is the thing.
No. Is quantum locking a thing?
It's a thing.
It's not an orbit.
I won't say it's
So-
not,
so-
but I've never heard of it.
quantum
So-
locking be an
I
orbit.
never heard of it.
Oh, okay. So quantum locking isn't orbit. Do I need to side? I'll side it, man.
It's not. It's a magnetic effect when you super cool magnets.
And it does what?
It
Holds
hovers.
them in place.
It hovers and does what?
Depends on what sort of.
It goes in a
magnetic
perpetual
path it has.
orbit.
No,
No?
it doesn't necessarily.
Okay, well, I guess I'll just have to side it.
We've seen the video. That isn't a.
No, this isn't about a video. You're talking about the TED Talk demonstration. I'm talking about the clinical studies of what
Seen several
quantum
videos
locking
about
is.
quantum locking, and they're not orbiting.
Not clinical.
They might
Dude,
spin in place, but
I'm
that's
about
not
to
an
just
orbit.
cite it then from higher education. You're priests.
Okay, cool.
Wow, y'all just contrarians, man. Y'all, this is because you hope that I'll run off and you want to. Because I got to a point where y'all couldn't answer me, which is how'd you get into orbit without the radius value? You had to obfuscate away.
Can't answer because you speak gibberish.
You had to obfuscate away from you need the radius value to be exactly accurate to even attain gravitational orbit. That dude said, "Oh, gravitational orbit." That was his argument back to my actual premise. It was a red herring fallacy.
Why do you need the radius?
And I entertained it, and you people
There you go.
still don't
Gibberish.
even like respect that I entertain it.
You do fucking parties, you clown.
You really thought about that punchline a while, huh?
What's it? When you do orbit
Yeah,
determination, the radius that matters is the orbital radius, not the Earth radius.
Is that relative to the Earth radius?
No.
The orbital
It's
radius
relative to the
isn't
center of mass
relative
of
to the
Earth. It's
Earth's
not relative to
radius.
the Earth radius.
Is the mass of the Earth relative to the size of the
You
Earth?
ask you a question, is it relevant? You say no. He
This
doesn't
is
know
so
the
funny.
answer.
This is so funny. Is the Earth's mass relative to its size?
Listen, the only value that comes in when you're calculating a satellite orbit is the mass of the Earth, not its radius.
How do you determine the mass?
What do you mean, how do you determine the mass? It's
That
already
seems
been
like
measured
a simple question. It measured how?
by looking at the variations of the satellite trajectories. You can
So you
determine
have to have the size of the Earth to
the
get
mass
the.
properties of the Earth
No,
based
you
on that
don't.
variations.
So you don't. You're talking about once you get up to space. I'm talking about you have to have the radius to get there to get into orbit. So how
Why
did
do you
you
need the
do
radius
that?
of the Earth to get there?
Okay, because if you need the mass, you have to know the size of the Earth to get the mass of the Earth.
What's
Okay,
it?
how'd they figure
You're
out the
saying
math
that you
then? Tell us
need
how
to
they
do
figured
Is
out
all
the
anyone
of
in
these
this room
things.
going to at least say that he's
What's
wrong?
it? You're
No,
saying you
of course
need
not.
all
So
of
every
these
time I
things.
ask that, I
I'm
guess
telling
it's
you
just like a
don't,
pipe dream.
because I
I
work
guess.
in the industry and I work on these missions. So where are you getting this information from?
Do
What's
you
your
need the
citation that
size of
says
the
you
Earth
need
to
the radius of the Earth to calculate how you're going to get
Oh, see, y'all
a
just.
satellite into
I'd be in
orbit?
here siding all day. Do you need the size of the Earth? You won't answer a straight question. Do you need the size of the Earth to determine the mass of the Earth?
No.
Okay, how not? How do you
I mean, how
determine
you do?
mass? Does anyone in here, even Scott, maybe want to tell them they're wrong?
I'm not listening. I'm typing right
Do you need the size of the Earth to determine the mass of the Earth, Scott?
now. Do you need the size of the Earth to determine?
Because
The radius.
If you knew the density of the Earth, what you wouldn't
determine the
need it.
rate.
He's talking about the radius. No, you
I
don't need
guess
the
I
radius
don't-
to determine
The radius is the
radius?
size of the
radius
Earth, my
determine
friend.
mass? No. Okay, if you know the radius of the Earth, do you need that to determine the mass?
No, because
The size of the Earth. Yes, you do.
Yeah, you have the radius of the Earth. I honestly don't fully know because I don't actually know what the technique is for determining the mass of the Earth. How do we do it?
determine the mass of the Earth based on the effects it has on other planets and the moon?
Based on the relative sizes.
No.
Y'all don't even understand your own religion.
Nope.
Okay, well, this is what your religion says. Gravity wells
No, it
result based. Gravity wells result based on a layout layout of mass. Right. That results in a gravity well because it affects the bending and warping of space-time relative to that mass, and so that gravity well affects the other mass relative to their mass relationships within space-time fabric.
Yep.
Okay,
Exactly.
so that means you have to know the relative sizes.
No, you don't.
Okay, I'm just gonna prove it.
With
Good, prove it.
if you took the Earth, if you took the size
All right,
of
look,
the
I just
Earth,
Googled this. How do you determine the mass of the Earth? And this is the
Well,
first thing that
then you're
popped up on
asking the wrong
Google.
question.
Because we know the radius of the Earth, we can use the law of universal gravitation to calculate the mass of the Earth in terms of the gravitational force on an object, its weight, at the Earth's surface, using the radius of the Earth as the distance.
Yeah, that's one way. That's not the only way.
Oh my God! Y'all will never, ever just be honest and concede you were wrong about something.
with it,
Something we're wrong about.
if you took the Earth, you shrunk it to half its size, but compressed it to keep its mass the same, those satellites would have the same exact trajectory.
This dude just said he does this for a living, and then I literally disproved him, and now he's doubling down. What does gravitational constant require? Does that require the radius of the Earth?
Nope.
No.
So you can determine the gravitational constant without the radius of the Earth?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh,
The gravitational
yeah.
constant
That's crazy. Okay, so
How can
all
you
these
do that?
citations are wrong.
Hold
No,
on,
you're just
How are
wrong.
you gonna, hold up, you have
Quotations
two
are right.
unknown variables in that equation if you don't have the radius of the Earth. So how are you
But
gonna?
you don't have to use Earth. You can use
Multiple
Venus and
measures
Jupiter.
solve a multivariable
Use Venus and the
problem.
Sun.
Where'd you get the sizes of
And
Venus and Sun?
But
and
wait
the
a
Sun?
minute, you're not actually using the radius of the object. You're using the distance between the two centers of the object.
Yeah.
you
How
need
do you
to
know the
know the
distance between the two
sizes to know
centers of
that
the
distance,
objects if you
bro.
don't know the
No, you
radius?
don't.
Any
You don't
number
have to know
of
what the
ways.
centers are.
Oh my
You
God.
can know the distance between
This
the
is
centers
funny.
any number of ways.
So
The radius
Scientific
is a
American
convenient
is
way, but
wrong,
not
and y'all are right.
necessary.
Is that correct?
The article you're reading is
radial
simplified.
distance of the masses, not the radius of the individual size of the object.
Is Scientific American wrong, and y'all are right?
Oh,
We're not
it's
contradicting it.
simplified. It doesn't tell you everything.
So
you know the
is
distance
Scientific
to
American
Jupiter?
right, or are y'all wrong?
I'm sure that what's inside the American is probably correct. I don't think we're contradicting it. I think that you're creating contradictions unfairly or arbitrarily.
Yo, bros, how did you guys figure out the distance to Jupiter?
This is being recorded. You said you don't need the radius or the size of the Earth to determine the mass. I just now went to Scientific American. I linked the article. Here's a screenshot. Because we know the radius of the Earth, you got to know it because you use the law of universal gravitation. You calculate the mass of the Earth in terms of gravitational.
Can you really? Fine.
Y'all
Can you really
are
hear
so
something? 'Cause this is
dishonest,
live.
man.
Let me just really hear something. Just really hear something because I want to say something really true and real, like just without being defensive about it. What you've done is show that there is a method that uses the radius. What they're saying is there are other methods that don't use the radius.
Then provide
Now,
the
if
evidence
that's
of
true,
that.
Hold on. If that's true, they're not contradicting you. It just turns out that you know about a method that happened to use the radius, and that they're saying, "Oh, you could do it this other way," which I guess someone said the effects on the moon or something, which could be true.
Okay, Scott,
So
you do.
yeah,
Now listen real fast, Scott.
right?
Scott.
So let's see if it's
I hear
true.
what you're
They made
saying.
a positive claim. They have a burden
Right.
of proof.
Now, if you're going to be intellectually honest, you're going to hold them to it because I went and cited my claim. After they all said I was wrong about it. First of all, by the way, Scott, they didn't say, Scott, Scott, listen, they didn't just say, well, there could be another way. They said you don't need it. And then they said you don't need it.
There's another way you don't need it, right?
So then, but I said, do you use the size of the Earth to get the mass? They said no. So then I said, yes, I proved that they do. Now they're backpedaling.
You don't need it.
Then why
No,
can't
but
I
think
get
about it. If you don't,
So
if
should
know
they
a
have to
method that
provide the
does- can I
citation
just-
for that?
Can I just say something? If they know a method that doesn't use the radius of the Earth, then they're saying it exactly right. You don't need it because they know a method that doesn't use it. So
Okay, should they have to provide a citation for that then?
To say that you cannot do it with the radius of the Earth.
Sure, if you need a citation or something, and then whichever one of them said it or whatever they said, I'm sure that they might have it or they might be willing to go get it.
Well, for the
Go ahead and go
third-party
for it.
viewer, 3 or 4 people in here literally said I was stupid and didn't know what I was talking about and laughed at me because I'm so stupid. And so that you know now at home, right, one method for sure is that you use the radius to get the mass to attain gravitational orbits. So they're making a claim now that they just made up theoretically because they don't want to concede in anything in entirety, that they think there's another way they could do it.
Well,
so we're waiting for them to substantiate
before you read that. They said the other way before you read that, to be fair. So they weren't making anything up. They weren't doing it because they thought they were wrong. They gave you the method or mentioned something about the method, and it had to do with the way in which other bodies are affected.
All right, cool. Look, Scott, Extreme Assist just posted this, okay? And it says calculating the gravitational attraction between two objects requires taking the product of two masses and dividing by the square of the distance between them. How do you get the product of the masses, and how do you know the distance between them?
Well,
you measure to the center of each of them, right?
Yeah, but you don't necessarily know where the edges are. You don't necessarily know where the radius is. You just need to know where the center is.
Then how did you get the mass?
I don't know.
It says calculating the gravitational attraction between two objects requires taking the product of two masses.
Yes.
So we have to get the mass, right?
Backwards, if you have the gravitational effects, then you can derive the mass.
Well, the gravitational effects assume the radius.
No.
You don't understand then.
Bro, the equation is F equals G times the first mass, second mass, and the radius square.
Radius between the center of the percent. Between the center of masses.
Yeah, how did you get the masses?
Go ahead, Boomer. Did you want to get it there, Boomer? Boomer, go ahead.
Look at the way how. When Van Braun, the scientist from Germany, calculated escape velocity,
you have to have the radius do that.
As in velocity necessary to break gravity, he then. Are you going to let me finish? You've asked the question, I've got the answer. Van Braun used escape velocity to calculate the radius, therefore the mass. So you're saying he can't do it? That was the first calculation. Once they worked out how to get a rocket out of orbit, they then calculated.
Okay.
And rocket scientists could probably confirm that, but that's my take.
Okay, I got you. And I hear what you're saying. You're right. That is a different way. But, dude, the whole entire original conversation was, I don't think you can attain, or not think, you can't attain gravitational orbit without the radius value. They said that wasn't true. You can't say once they got into gravitational orbit and then determine escape velocity that they got the radius that way, or the mass that way, because I am challenging that you can't even get into the orbit and then the escape velocity without the mass, which requires the radius before you go up there and try and do it.
Would you have the higher escape velocity?
All right, wait a minute.
If the shuttle is heavier?
Okay,
wait a minute.
WITSIT is correct in one sense, because you would need to know how far you are from the center of the Earth. Basically, you're at the surface to be able to know how much thrust you need to apply in order to get into orbit.
But you could theoretically figure that out by trial and error, though. That is possible.
Yeah. But do you think that they did that, dude?
Wait a minute. Do that by trial and error.
You could risk so many people's lives doing that, dude.
Yeah.
You would risk everyone's lives big time, dude.
Can I talk?
Sorry, yeah, dude.
Yeah. That's only true if you're trying to get into a specific low Earth orbit. If you're just trying to get into an arbitrary high orbit, you don't need to know anything about the exact shape.
Are you saying that's what they did?
Just keep going.
By the way, let's not forget that the
did?
first orbital launches were unmanned, so you weren't risking anyone's life.
Well, no, we were originally. This started because someone said something about the ISS, and I said, "How could you get it up there without?" Wow, dude! I said, "How could you even get there without the radius?" So that means they knew exactly what altitude they were trying to attain in gravitational orbit to maintain free fall for long periods of time. They went to the most efficient pocket. I'm almost done. They went to the. I'm almost done. They went to the most efficient pocket in the gravitational orbit.
No, they didn't.
So the ISS didn't go to the most efficient pocket?
Yeah, can we dissect this?
I don't know what that even means.
I know you don't.
Without being interrupted now.
Velocity? How does that work?
Wait, well, let's get what he was saying without being interrupted, and then you can go up percent.
All right.
After him, okay?
Yes, the ISS is in a very low orbit, and to do that with any accuracy, you would need to know the shape of the Earth. Sure, but can you not at least consider that the ISS wasn't the first thing put in orbit? We should figure out all this other stuff after we did the other stuff first.
Yeah, because we already had the radius value at that point. Like they used the radius for the calculations.
Okay, so the ISS is not the problem here.
Well, we need to figure out how they substantiated the radius value, because if it was wrong, they couldn't have done it.
Yeah, to the gentleman that claimed that you could get the radius value from the escape velocity as you're leaving the atmosphere. Could you explain how?
Yes. Okay. That was the V2 rocket by Van Braun. What they did was launch the rocket. It got into basically orbit, then turned off and came down. They measured the range. Now, they then achieved, through getting the one-stage rocket into the orbit where it could break and then come back down as a bomb, Van Braun then went to the US and worked for NASA, and they worked out the two-stage rocket, which achieves escape velocity. This wasn't done with lives. This was done through weapons of warfare. If you look up the V2 rocket documentaries, great subject, you'll learn something. Thank you.
Will you cite it?
Wouldn't you need orbital velocity as opposed to escape velocity? Because wouldn't escape velocity just depend on the
Why
mass
don't people ever
of
just cite their stuff?
the craft? The density of the craft?
The size of the craft is irrelevant for this.
Some people do, to be fair. Some people here do cite their stuff.
And speaking of which, did you ever get that call back from your friends about that one citation?
It's not a callback. It's in my DMs. Let me look.
And for these missiles, they're not doing anything orbital. It's either suborbital or escape.
To clarify that you are contending my claim here that you're talking about, Scott, I'm saying that American Towers, which provide the towers for DirecTV and Dish, they spent like billions and billions of dollars strictly on towers, nothing on anything with space technology, and then they actually contract their towers out all over the nation to DirecTV and Dish, and they use that for their satellite TV. Are you contending that? That's what my claim is.
I thought your claim was that the satellite dishes are pointed at the towers, and that you
right. Well, that the satellite. I didn't install them, no, but I talked to a person that came to install them. He said that he had to aim it at the tower, and the tree might be in the way. That was DirecTV because I wanted the NFL pass. I wanted the NFL pass. You get a free year. He came. I got DirecTV just to get the NFL pass. He came, and then there were some trees. It was an apartment. I lived with my girlfriend, and he said you can't send it that way. We don't know if we can send it that way. I had to send it this way. I even put his supervisor on speakerphone and was talking to him about it. He's like, well, try it, and we'll see if we can get it. And they couldn't read a signal.
That's the thing I'm curious. The dish is pointed at the tower. That claim right there is the part that I'm curious to see citation on.
Okay. But anyway, so, yeah, I forgot about that. I should have already brought that. But no, I don't want to change the subject, dude. So, okay, dude, if you think that they're shooting at satellite shooting through space, then you just need to research it. They don't even claim that.
I know where my dish is pointed.
They do not claim satellite TV is strictly because they are hitting satellites. They use towers.
It's pointed at the sky.
The sources I found say they use the satellites. They don't say strictly because I guess they don't feel the need.
Okay, so they do use towers. They admit they use towers.
No, they don't say that. They don't say that. The sources I found say they use geosynchronous.
So
there are no towers. Let me finish, guys. The source I read says that they use geosynchronous satellites. That there's 12 of them in the U.S. and that the satellite dishes have to align or point to or track or be pointed at one of those geosynchronous satellites.
Right. Yeah. So they're geostationary, right? They're geostationary, right?
Yeah. Synchronous stationary, same thing.
Right.
Geostationary.
Yeah, of course. I know. I'm just saying. So they're geostationary, and I'm saying you're saying that the DirecTV dishes never use towers.
Never.
Okay. Well, I will provide.
Show me the evidence that they use a tower.
Okay, I will. They have a contract with American Towers, the biggest manufacturing of transmission towers in the world, and they contract those towers out to DirecTV.
That might be for the uplink.
Why do
That might be for the uplink.
For DirecTV uplink, what's that?
The TV show to the satellite, you don't beam down to the house.
I'm sorry, I don't know what that DirecTV uplink. Sorry, say again.
Yeah, because
the uplink
show,
signal
it gets made on Earth, and the show has to be set upwards to the satellite in order to be beamed back down to the houses.
Okay.
Right? It has to go
But so they do use towers then.
The dishes
but they don't. But you're saying they don't use towers for everything. Okay, that's all right.
So with
he's saying that they might be for uplink, but we're saying I think I was saying the dishes.
Okay, well anyway, dude, I don't even dispute that things can be high up in the sky in what they call geostationary orbit. I don't dispute that things can stay up in the sky and maintain altitude. We have solar powered drones that can be miles and miles above, never having to come down, that are commercially available for 2-3 years now.
Well,
so
that's
I
not
don't
really
dispute
true
that.
yet.
Yes, it is. It's called the Odyssey by Boeing. Do I need to link that too?
Yeah, I don't think it's step indefinitely yet. I think that's like still 5 years in the future, I bet.
Okay, well,
Also,
like incredibly long then. They can stay up pretty damn. Well, no, you're right. They can't go to the altitude they claim. I dispute that altitude.
I'm not talking about claimed altitudes. They can't go to the altitude that you can triangulate that the signal.
Triangulation? So you're looking at it and triangulating it? God,
that's
bro.
Not triangulation.
Well, yeah, too bad. Trigonometrical deduction of triangulation requires an actual location objectively.
Yeah,
it's like inherent in the understanding of trigonometry.
And also
the location of your two observed observations
on a curved Earth. There are no straight lines. Why are you going to use straight line trigonometry?
Yeah, you have to impose an arc. Spherical trigonometry, you have to impose an arc.
Can you respond instead of you just repeating yourself?
I just said something new, but yeah, go ahead.
And you said it like 5 times.
I said it twice, but go ahead.
Anyway,
it's like a
if you just do it over, let's say 100, 200 miles, but even if you assume that distance that you traveled is straight instead of over a curve, you're still going to get a very similar altitude.
Now you have the apparent location. You can't do
it's not going to be
trigonometry.
correct, sure, but it's still going to be ridiculously high altitude for anything that.
How can you say what the? How can you say what the altitude is going to be if you just admit it's not going to be correct?
You can't use straight line
I'm saying that even if you assume that the ground that you're traveling over is flat, it's still too high for a drone.
Alright, guys, the premise here is they told us all we live on a certain...
The angles of the dishes would never work out.
How did they get into the orbit in the first place without the radius value?
What makes you think they didn't have the radius value?
Okay, thank you. That should have been the first thing we did, right? So, they said they did have it. People argue for it like you don't need it, but they, of course, said they did have it because you do need it. So the question is, how did we empirically validate the R value to such an accurate extent we were willing to put human beings' lives at stake?
Why do you need it to an accurate extent to launch a rocket into space? WITSIT.
For example, put the ISS into orbit. It's because the relative nature of the mass of the ISS and the mass of the Earth in the fabric of space-time, resulting in the gravitational well, the gravity well around the Earth, is going to cause a certain altitude requirement so that you can maintain gravitational orbits.
What's the error of a launch injection that's acceptable to put a satellite into orbit?
I don't know. You tell me, man.
I can give you the number, but I can tell you that there's a pretty big envelope.
So you don't know.
You make it seem that it needs to be put at meter precision. Are you kidding me? If it's like a couple of hundred,
it does.
If it's a couple of hundred meters from where it's supposed to be, that's perfectly fine.
Well, yeah, of course. I'm talking like you could even go a couple miles or something in either direction. Maybe I'll give you that. I'll say like I think that's actually high. That's like it's less than that. Right, it's way less than that. But I'm like I'll give you that. Like say a mile in each direction. It's less than that. But say a mile in each direction.
Why do you need an accurate R if that's the case?
Well, it has to be accurate within a mile in both directions.
There's a variance within Earth radius as it is.
Because gravity is based on that value. So if gravity is off,
it's not WITSIT.
So the Earth's gravity isn't relative to the Earth's size.
If you turn Earth into a black hole, it wouldn't make a difference to the satellites.
Do I have to cite this too? That gravity requires radius.
WITSIT. Will you stop? Just listen to what he just said, because what he said is true, and you're just talking to him. So it's like,
oh yeah, let him walk all past my points. I get it.
Yeah, turn Earth into a black hole. Turn Earth into a black hole, and the satellites aren't going to move into different orbits.
What's a black hole, dude?
Turn it into a super dense small object.
Oh, so this is a hypothetical thought experiment. The plot line of a Disney movie.
He's making a point that gravity is not dependent upon the sun.
Oh, yeah, okay. I was like asking me about the plot line of The Little Mermaid.
Okay.
I mean, come on.
Black holes are purely theoretical. This is admitted.
All right, then.
Take the spirit of what he's saying.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Go ahead, man.
Compress Earth into a tiny object with the same amount of mass, and the satellites are going to continue on their orbits.
Okay.
Just the same as if Earth were the same. And go the other way. Increase the size of Earth, but keep the mass the same, and the high Earth orbit satellites that aren't wiped out by the ground crashing into them orbit just fine.
Okay, but the way that we determine mass is with the size. We just covered that.
We can.
No, that's how it's determined. I'm still waiting for a citation contrary to that.
You got some?
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
Well, if you ignore them, whatever.
No, I didn't ignore them. I didn't get them.
There was one that said, if provided you have the masses of the two objects, and then you can figure out like the radius of one. Or
did you forget how algebra works?
And in the equation had the R value.
That wasn't the radius of the object.
Listen, you can only solve for one variable at a time, right? So if you don't have R, then you're going to have the mass.
That's a different R.
Listen, to know the radius of the gravitational orbit, to know the radius of the orbit, right? You're going to have to go from the center of the Earth up to your altitude, and you're going to need to know the surface because that's how you're going to know how high up you are. You're going to have to know how high above the surface you are, right? You're with your altitude. And then you need to know where the center of mass is. So you know the surface and the center of mass. That's the radius.
Okay. So what? We have an accurate value of R. I still don't
Okay.
get
How'd you get that? How'd you get the accurate value?
Through all kinds of surveying
Just
throughout
name one.
history.
Just name one specifically, please.
But why?
Surveying.
Why do we have
Geodetic surveying, is that your claim?
But why do we
That's
have
one
to
of
do
them.
that?
Okay,
Why do we have to pretend that it's just one?
Well, no, I'm saying just talk about one at
Are
a
you going
time.
to do them all one by one?
Well, isn't that the efficient way to have a discussion?
No.
As opposed to scattergunning baseless assertions, so that we actually look at each one.
Well, not because it's just.
Thinking that we have to go over every.
We're just
You just
go
don't
over-
want to talk about it because you know you can't defend it.
Oh, it's just I don't have to defend it with.
Okay, can you concede you can't?
You need to. No, I won't concede that for a moment. That's
I know.
complete and utter bollocks.
Yeah, you're a
But
contradiction.
the point is, all you ever do, ultimately, all your waffle, all the big words, all of it, it only ever amounts to you saying, "I don't believe you." That's it.
Yeah.
And anyone can do that. I could sit here
That's
all day.
not true. That's
I
so
don't believe
stupid.
that. No, I don't believe that. No, I don't
That's
believe
not
that.
true.
How do
That's
you know
not
that?
true.
I don't believe
That's
that.
not
I don't
true.
believe that.
That's not true.
Anyone can do that.
That's what you do. You just do it
Well,
the
what's
opposite
it-
of that.
No, I don't.
Well, what's it?
Yes, it is. You blindly believe things you don't understand. I understand your claims better than you do. Okay, how do you establish plum? How do you establish plum?
How
You
was
never
because
present
it's people
anything,
and P.
Witsy.
Okay, so is plum on a flat Earth different to a plum on a sphere Earth?
Anything, Witsy.
If P equals in P, what are the implications?
Jesus, you never
Okay,
present
so
anything, Witsy.
yes, I do, man. Last time I was here, I gave you the geodesy. Fucking.
You never present anything, Witsy. You just make people defend the globe. You say it yourself. You're not a flat earther. You're not making any claims. We've got to support the claim. That's the whole basis of your argument.
That's true.
So I can't do that to you because you never say anything. Well, you do when you fuck up regularly, but your goal is not to. So that's why.
So he never
Wow,
said
dude, that's
anything, but he
ridiculous.
does.
You had to mute me and straw man the shit out of me, dude.
Well, why would it matter that I muted you?
Because
if
you
I-
were straw manning me.
If I unmuted
That is
you,
such like
so you intended
have
to
no
interrupt-
dignity, dude.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
intended
no,
to
you keep
interrupt
over
everyone.
talking him, so he has to mute you.
But he's lying about what I say.
And as you're telling me now, you intended to interrupt me.
Okay, so here's the truth of the matter. I never just say, no, I don't believe it. I actually know more about the claims than you do. That's why you don't want to discuss them. You want to make a vague invoking of the fact it's been done so many times in so many ways for so long. And you think that somehow that's actually sufficient in intellectual form.
Yes.
And then you say,
Yes.
I don't.
Yes.
Then you say, I
do.
don't.
That's an
Then you say, I don't.
Yes.
Then you say, I
Absolutely,
don't
I do.
make.
Absolutely.
Dude,
In
I'm
any
gonna-
intellectual forum, any intellectual forum, the evidence that
dude.
we present for knowing the radius of the Earth, of course, would be accepted.
Shut up, dude. I'm addressing your straw mans and you're interrupting me.
Hey,
Or
percentage, just stay out
any
of it,
other
okay?
claim, or
I'm
any
addressing your
other
straw
claim,
mans and you're interrupting me,
or
dude.
any other claim that was
After you
supported
muted
with,
me and straw man me.
or any other claim which was supported with evidence of that quality. Of course.
Okay.
it would. So
Dude,
don't
calm
pretend
down.
that
Wizard,
you're
go ahead.
that you're following some intellectual standard, because that's just bullshit.
Okay.
Okay.
Now you can't
well, you
appeal.
make money.
Finish to the end, okay?
Yeah, you can't appeal to incredulity, but the second straw man you said was that I don't make any claims. I'm not even a flat earther. I never said that. I am a flat earther. I make that claim that the surface of the earth is flat. That's a general descriptor claim of the surface of the earth. That's not a shape claim. So now that we have addressed the two straw mans, can you actually substantiate the radius value without
There you go.
spiraling?
Can you show me any video recording of any debate you've been involved in where you presented evidence for the flat Earth that you say you believed it? You believe it.
Yeah, go look at my debate with McToon, and I invoke the Black Swan.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay.
So, WITSIT, do
Now
you
can you
think the
substantiate
two
the radius?
plums... Do you
Wait,
think the
can
two
we? Why are you
plums
trying
taken
to?
at two
Can we
different-
not? Sorry, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? I have a question.
I guess so.
Do you think the two Okay, I don't have to. If you want to, if you have some other topic that you guys want.
Well, I mean, if you, I just really want the original topic to be discussed, Scott. Like, you know, that's what I want. It's like, how do we substantiate the R value? Can we talk about it specifically instead of acting like I'm stupid because people just want to vaguely say that we've done it a lot of ways and then they don't want to talk about it specifically?
Well, but
let's have a productive intellectual exchange.
Okay, that's cool. I thought, okay, that's cool. But I want to say that I thought we have been pretty. We've gone over a lot of the different methods. We've talked about which ones would have assumptions, which ones wouldn't. We've talked about whether or not they corroborate and to what extent they do. What else?
Well, which ones? Wait, here's my question. Which one wouldn't have an assumption?
Pictures from space is an example, one that wouldn't.
But that you had to have the R value to get to space. So you're saying that based on a bunch of assumptions. Wait, listen, I don't want to straw man you. Based on a bunch of correlations of things that did require assumptions, they got an approximation and they were comfortable enough with that to try to go to space?
I agree with you.
Exactly
so what?
Is that your?
I don't know exactly what all they knew. But I don't think you need to know these things to go to space.
You do need to know it. We just proved it.
No, you didn't. I don't think that's true. I'm telling you what I believe. I do not believe. I do not think there's any really good arguments to say you have to know these things in order to escape the gravitation or not to get into orbit of Earth.
Okay, well that's patently false. But even if I give it to you, which that is false, we just cited it. But even if I give that to you, dude, Scott, even if I give it to you, so are you willing to say that's the only method that doesn't require assumption?
No, I don't think
okay, then what's the other one that doesn't require assumption that I can independently verify without trusting NASA?
I don't know if there's one that you can independently verify. Let me think. So,
how about Eratosthenes' method with 3 points?
Okay. You have to map that out on spherical trigonometry. That's a spherical assumption.
No,
you don't have to use spherical trigonometry.
So we can't use anything.
Yes, you do.
Which we can't use anything.
No, just trigonometry.
Which says
you don't think Eratosthenes proved the radius of the Earth?
I think Eratosthenes established the radius of the Earth.
Oh my
Can I cue up on that note one time?
And
you
he
use
do it with
straight
3
line
points.
trigonometry, Euclidean trigonometry, or
I'll
geometry.
admit that
You're using straight lines. What are you talking about, dude? Do you know the
You
method?
have no straight lines aside from going straight down to the center of the Earth. There is no straight
That's
lines
not true,
otherwise
dude.
on a globe.
You don't know, you clearly don't know the method if you're saying that.
Really? How do you get a straight line on the globe Earth?
You don't need a straight line on the globe.
Yeah, it's an arc length.
In order to do the measurement, what you need to do is measure the shadow length and the pole lengths and the position lengths,
and assume a
then
distant
figure out
sun.
To what extent is it curving?
Assume a distant sun.
Lines, yeah.
No.
Okay, so that's an assumption, Scott.
But the honest thing established by Aristarchus.
That's assuming the heliocentric model, dude.
Okay.
You said this was going to be without
The
assumption.
rays of the sun were parallel. Aristarchus established that the rays of the light were parallel.
You said this was going to be without assumption.
Go.
Hold up. How do we have straight?
It is. I just told you. Aristarchus established the rays are parallel.
How do you do that?
Sun rays on a globe Earth.
All right. This is why I
you're confused, percent.
Using 3 points.
I'm really not.
You don't have to assume. This is why I specified 3 points. You don't have to assume a distant sun with 3 points. You can come to that conclusion by analyzing the data that you've collected
on a spherical, trigonometrical breakdown.
You're using straight line trigonometry, which you can't use on a globe Earth because there are.
You have to use spherical trigonometry. That's a spherical assumption.
You are insane, percent.
Well, then fucking respond to it, man.
I heard you. I was going to
say, but the truth.
You're saying the only way the only way we can know the radius of the Earth is if we start with the assumption that it's not spherical.
I'm asking you to provide evidence contrary to that.
How would you make a radius calculation of a not circle?
Right. Well, yeah. But what I'm saying is, if you go and say that you add 3 points, when you add the third point, you have to do spherical trigonometry.
No, you don't.
Let's let him finish. Yes, you do. Let's let him get into what he wants to say.
You're not doing anything. You don't have to do any spherical geometry with the 3
trigonometry.
WITSIT, let him get to the end of his point, please.
You don't even have to do trig. You can draw it down on a piece of paper with just drawings.
Oh my
no
God.
direct math.
Straight lines,
measuring the angle that you measure.
Dude.
Yeah, try doing that with.
You can start with your flat Earth assumption. You can start with your flat Earth assumption and find that those lines won't converge on it. You can try as many shapes as you want, and then you'll find that they only converge on a circular path.
It requires a straw.
Are you assuming something about the sun then?
Yes.
No, you're something about the sun from your observations.
It sounds like
wait, no, actually, crepuscular rays are inconsistent with 90-degree angles.
Oh yeah, sure. It's a solid object. That's hilarious.
No, but I'm just saying it is. You can say it's just a trick on our eyes, but it is.
It's not a trick.
You can say it's just a trick on our eyes. Yes, that's the explanation. You can say it's a perception trick on our eyes. That's what it is. You're saying that we're seeing what we're not really seeing.
Light come in parallel, guys. The rays of light come in parallel, and that's all that matters. And we established that through Aristarchus.
No, you didn't.
The second thing
I mean, there is a method he used.
Okay, yeah, he might have tried to.
But Veach,
well, supposedly it worked.
Supposedly.
Parallel lines, Veach, if you have more than 2 points using the Aristotle.
No, even with 3 points, the parallel line still would matter.
No. It could be non-parallel. It could measure a close sun just as well as a distant sun. It is not a requirement that the rays have to be parallel to do 3 or more points.
But spherical trigonometry is required.
You're
mapping out the shadows onto a curved surface with an arc length.
Oh, come on, dude. The shadows are like 4 feet long.
Do you map it out on an arc length?
No, you don't.
Okay,
You map it
provide
on
the citation
linear
for it then, because you're wrong.
Stop interrupting everybody. You don't do it with arc length. Arc lengths, you measure with a linear distance like 4 feet.
Okay, provide the citation.
Sorry.
No, dude,
of no spherical trigonometry.
How do you think you measure it? If I'm not gonna cite that, you can't figure that out.
You map it out with spherical trigonometry.
Before we had spherical trigonometry, we had the Pythagorean theory and sections. Yeah, I don't know the maths, but I do know the fucking history. And then you go into Euclidean geometry, which also will deal in sections. So where it couldn't deal with a 3-dimensional object, what it can do is deal with the sections. Now, someone that understands the fucking maths, fill the rest in, please.
Well, you just now supported my point, though. That's what I'm saying.
So what's wrong with using a section to describe a sphere?
Well, what I'm saying is,
No, WITSIT, answer that one point there. Don't move any further.
Yeah, when you take that section, you are imposing it into the spherical assumption using spherical trigonometry. No. I've asked you to cite it then because I know that you have to.
So you agreed with me that we can take a 3-dimensional object and we can treat it in sections.
Euclidean geometry is what you said, right?
Using Pythagorean and
which is for Euclidean. A parabola, right?
No.
What's it for?
Okay, guys, deal with this guy. It doesn't matter what the shape of the fucking object is.
So the Pythagorean theorem has nothing to do with the parabola?
Just let him finish.
You can do it with circles, you can do it with cubes, you can do it with all sorts of 3-dimensional objects. It's just a way of taking especially irregular objects in maths, because that was a problem back in Greek history. And what they did is they worked out, we don't need to treat the thing as a whole. It's the classic thing of cutting the Gordian knot. Break your problem into the smallest possible parts and add them back together, and you come out pretty much right. That's sectional geometry, as by Pythagoras and written about by Euclid. Learn your fucking history.
What? You think you just now refuted something I said?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well, next.
So the method's pretty straightforward. It doesn't involve any kind of special geometry. Just use trig, and it gives you an answer that's good.
So you do use trig?
Yeah.
So why are people in your own server disputing it and you're not calling them out, man? Because it's getting exhausting.
Nobody is saying that you don't use trig.
I've heard numerous people say you don't use trig.
Who?
Okay, the person that was just talking. And the reason is because
say that.
If I say anything, I said it requires spherical trigonometry, and he said no, it doesn't.
What is spherical trigonometry? I said it doesn't require trig. What's spherical trigonometry?
Oh, so you're saying it's planar trigonometry?
Yes.
Yeah, that's why I said there's only any kind of special trigonometry. So I don't even know what spherical trigonometry is, but you don't need any kind of special trigonometry.
You don't know what spherical trigonometry is? It has a z-axis. It's very simple.
No, that's just 3-dimensional trig.
Right, because you're mapping out the trigonometrical deduction on a sphere.
Not necessarily. Just because.
What do you mean? Spherical trigonometry doesn't have a sphere? Not necessarily.
What are you doing it on a cube? What if you're doing it on a cube?
Yeah. But we're not. It's spherical trigonometry.
Well, that's my point. Is just because you added a 3rd dimension doesn't make it spherical.
But in this context, it does.
No, it doesn't. Because
so they don't use spherical trigonometry.
In this context, you're not even using 3 dimensions. I don't think.
Cite it.
You're using 2 dimensions. I think.
You're just saying things. Cite it. No, you're telling me what you think happens.
Look,
Cite
after
it.
we're done talking, we can go look up exactly how it's done. If you don't know, I thought everybody knew how it's done. We can look it up and we can.
I do know it requires
straightforward.
spherical trigonometry to
No, it
deduce the
doesn't.
calculations,
How so?
or what you can. There's two options. You're going to use planar trigonometry and try to falsify a straw man model of the Earth and tell me what's impossible on a flat Earth. Or you're going to take spherical trigonometry and then you're going to map it out on a sphere.
I'll tell you. Okay, let's.
Listen, you don't even know anything about trigonometry. So why would you even talk about this?
Why? Wait, are you saying that it doesn't use spherical trigonometry?
That's what we're saying.
So use planar trigonometry then.
Hold on, Trust. Go ahead.
Y'all
Trust.
never respond to my premise, dude.
Hold on, what's it? Hold on, we'll get to it.
So yeah,
Trust
so we can use if we're doing a measurement in trigonometry, and we're doing relatively medium distances, few miles, tens of miles, whatever. We can treat shit like a flat planar section, yeah, and we can do that. So if I'm doing a sighting to gain the height of an object, and I just want to use standard trig, hypotenuse and all that, then I can do that. I don't need to think of a sphere to do that.
You're right.
That's
Yeah,
how
of
I
course.
can measure the height of a tree. So to call it spherical geometry is you trying to poison the well. It's not a fucking maths term as far as I know, but please.
I'm not trying to poison the well. That's why I made the
correct
distinction.
Correct me if I am wrong.
Okay, I'm not trying to poison the well because I made a distinction between the two methodologies. Either you can map it on a sphere, right, using
You can map
spherical
it on
trigonometry,
any shaped
or
object.
your other option is you can use planar trigonometry,
What about
right, which is what you're
pentagonal
talking
trigonometry?
about. See, this is crazy, dude.
Here's how you do it.
Yeah, let's
You
just
try to
interrupt
use-
me over and
you put-
over, yeah.
Well, I think
It's
you're
probably
right.
because I'm a stupid flat earther.
No, I'm saying I think you're right, WITSIT. You use planar geometry, okay? That's what you do. And then you look to see if the planar geometry, the planar trig you're using, matches the data that you got when you actually did it. And what happened was it didn't match the data.
Now, that's
It
what I
didn't
said,
match.
isn't it, Scott?
Hold on, let me finish. Can I please finish? What happened was it did not match the data. And then the question becomes, well, what shape does match the data? And it turns out that a sphere matched the data.
Okay, now if you would like to cite how it doesn't match the data, I will be happy to look at it. I know that that's just a baseless assertion you're making.
It's
You
not
have
a
to
baseless
assume that
assertion.
if we have a divergent ray path because the sun's more local and the Earth's flat, we would get the shadows we get. What y'all say is that it's impossible on some straw man interpretation of the calculations. And every time I ask you to cite them, and I'm talking not you specifically, Globers for like 2 years, I never get it. They always end up saying, well, we're organizing what we're going to do together. But they never seem to want to do
They
it.
did do it. Kosho
Some people have claimed to do it. I've looked at, Kosho.
Yeah.
Kosho's.
Did you see it?
Yeah. Yeah, you think Kosho's proves that the Earth's a ball and that we know the size of it?
What I think Kosho's does is give you exactly what you're just talking about. Is
So
the
it falsifies that it can happen on a flat Earth?
Oh my gosh. The data that doesn't comport with flat Earth.
Right.
yeah.
Why doesn't it
work
comport with flat Earth?
Well, because if you try to put that on a plane, you can't get those numbers. You can't have a single source of light. You can't have a single source of light generate shadows that will work out like.
Can you be more specific? That means you're saying that the angles don't compute with a planar assumption?
That's right. If you try to put all the stakes on a plane and then try to arrange the geometry so that you get the results, you find that just like whack-a-mole. Every time you get the right one for one stake, you've put the other ones out of position. And so there's no way to get them so that they'll get a correct answer.
This isn't actually true, though, because there's a practical demonstration where you can put sticks on a flat surface, and then you can put sticks on a surface that's curved by just like taking cardboard paper or something, like construction paper, or something thicker than that, really.
Like
and
that,
you take.
WITSIT, am I
Oh
helping
my
you?
god!
Let him
dude.
finish talking.
Let him finish us.
Then you put a couple, like 3 sticks on it, and then you can change the orientation of the light, and you will see that the shadows remain the same on the flat and curved surface.
No, they
That
won't.
will only be if the
Yes, they
light
will.
is violating. That will only be if the light is like close and small, and it's going to be some weird situation where.
You mean like if the Earth is flat and the sun's closer and smaller?
I don't know what exactly they're doing there. You'd have to show me the experiment that you're referring to. But whatever the experiment you're referring to, I don't think it's going to be able to match reality.
No, it will
I feel
not.
like I've seen something like this.
Look at what Foolish Decision
will
just
not
posted,
work.
right? He
Okay,
just now
so
said
what
flat earthers will try to tell you the shadows are the same length. Research flat earth, expose their lies, and then he puts it next to the other one. Do you know why this is beyond incompetent, Scott?
Why?
This rebuttal? because the angle of the shadows is making the perception look like it's longer, but it's literally measured out in inches, and they're exactly the same length. It's just the perception of the shadow based on the angle of the surface.
How do you know this? Did you do this?
Because we measured it out.
You did?
Do you see the markers right there? The shadow stops the same marker.
So those pictures are you. You did this experiment.
No. Meme did this. So you're saying he's a liar?
Yeah,
I guess
I like Meme Warfare. I'm like some criminals. I would never say he's a liar.
But do you think that meme is pretty incompetent?
That is very misleading.
Copy paste.
I don't know. I'm only hearing your assertion.
Well, that meme makes an assertion that's like such a low IQ level.
I'll have to check out what the experiment really is showing. I'm interested.
Yeah. So anyway, Aristophanes doesn't substantiate the Earth's radius. So can we find another way that we can empirically substantiate it?
Look, so that's assuming that we don't have the parallel sun rays assumption, right? And if that's true with 3 points, I'll have to check and see exactly how he did that. I suspect it's by having a really tiny light source.
But here's my question for you: if when Bill Nye, this is going to help us. If when Neil deGrasse Tyson comes out and he discusses this and he says it worked the same on both models, unless you added a third point, isn't he thus inherently acknowledging that it could work on both models because you assumed the parallel rays? Meaning he's acknowledging that they assumed it. That's why he said it could work on both models, and he had to bring up how it couldn't, which is with 3. Okay.
I think he was saying that on the two, if you only use 2 sticks, then even with parallel lines, you get 2 answers. There's 2 solutions. So that's what makes the 2 sticks a kind of a weird experiment.
No, he's saying because if it's local and distant, you'd get the same thing. What I'm saying is that means he's acknowledging that it doesn't definitively prove the Earth's a ball using Aristophanes alone. Right? And because he had to assume the parallel parts. That's why he's acknowledging it.
He didn't assume that Aristarchus had a method of determining the rays were parallel or essentially parallel. And if you use 2 sticks, though, that doesn't help. It doesn't matter that he assumed that he saw that the rays were parallel from Aristarchus' demonstration.
But that demonstration doesn't prove that the light rays are parallel, dude.
Well, nothing proves anything, right? But it demonstrated.
No, it doesn't even get close, dude. It doesn't even get close.
It demonstrated that the light rays. You have to look it up. I can't remember exactly the details how it worked. It had to do with waiting.
Come on, then, dude.
Hold on, let me finish, dude. Waiting till the moon was at like a 90-degree angle from where you and the sun, and you made like a triangle between your observation there, and then tested a differential in terms of distance away, and then checked to see what different shadow you made. But it was an experiment that demonstrated that the rays coming in from the sun, wherever it was, were almost nearly perfectly parallel.
No, okay. So feel free to cite it. You clearly don't understand it, and then I'll look at it. So if we're being honest here, we know that Aristophanes.
Wait 1 second. If you understand it, can you cite it now? Off the top of your head.
I just said this. Yeah, I just said that
right now.
I did. I said you clearly don't because he admitted that he doesn't.
Well, what did I say that was wrong?
I don't know. I'm saying you admitted that you don't really remember. I'm just saying. Well, don't you think?
Well, I was remembering it as I went, though. Didn't you hear me?
Well, okay, so would you just like to cite it and I'll look at it? Is that an unfounded request?
Well,
because I have 20 people ask me for it all day, and it seems to be perfectly okay. Thank you, man. So we can agree, dude. The thing about Aristophanes is so funny. There's not even primary documentation that happened. There's only secondary documentation. Other people wrote about. There's not primary. Other people wrote about him doing it. Right. And so that's a little sketchy. And then how did you
right?
Oh my God.
No, I'm just saying it doesn't matter if he really did it.
Because you say we can do it now.
Well, he may not even really existed, right? But it could be done. I'm saying I don't know the answer
where you did it.
I didn't say we did it. We didn't. Kosho did it.
Did Socrates exist? Or did Plato write his stuff? Who knows?
Okay, I'm not even trying to argue whether or not it exists. I said that makes it a little sketchy if we're being intellectually honest researchers.
Yeah, and I was saying we don't even know if he was real, and that's okay.
Exactly. Okay, because it's the methodology that's important, right? That's your rebuttal.
If you were being intellectually honest, you wouldn't even bother mentioning the stuff about the primary evidence of Eratosthenes' existence.
Well, actually, that is intellectually honest because
the intellectually honest position is we know this to be true because we can repeat it today.
Okay, so you have to. I just now said that, Jim. You just were so caught up in already saying what you planned to say. Scott heard me say it, though. Scott heard me say it. Scott heard me say it. I said.
I understand that, but
I understand your response, man. You're saying it's the methodology that's important, not the person.
That
the saddest thing is
I understand.